Commander Jake Morrison had been flying F-18 Super Hornets for 15 years, but nothing had prepared him for the radio chatter crackling through his headset that Tuesday morning. The voice belonged to Captain Rebecca "Torch" Williams, his former wingman who had been shot down over enemy territory 3 months ago. Her body was never recovered. The military had declared her killed in action, and Jake had attended her memorial service, watched her parents weep as they folded the flag. Now, as he led his squadron through routine patrol exercises over the Pacific, that familiar voice cut through the static like a blade through his heart. "Phoenix Lead, this is Ghost Rider. I'm tracking an unknown aircraft approaching your position from the northeast. Advise immediate evasive action." Jake's hands trembled slightly on the controls. Ghost Rider had been Rebecca's call sign. The other pilots in his four-ship formation hadn't acknowledged the transmission, their radio chatter continuing normally as they discussed flight patterns and fuel consumption. Only Jake seemed to hear the impossible voice. "Ghost Rider, identify yourself," Jake transmitted, his voice steady despite the ice forming in his veins. "This is Phoenix Lead requesting authentication." Silence stretched across the airwaves. Jake's radar showed nothing unusual, just the three other Super Hornets in his formation maintaining perfect spacing. Lieutenant Marcus "Viper" Rodriguez flew off his right wing, while Captain Diana "Falcon" Chen and Lieutenant Commander Ryan "Hawk" Thompson held the left flank. All experienced pilots, all focused on their mission parameters. "Phoenix Lead, did you copy my transmission?" Jake tried again, switching to a secure channel. His squadron couldn't hear this frequency, but if Rebecca was somehow alive, somehow flying, she would know to monitor it. "I copy, Phoenix Lead." The voice came through crystal clear now, tinged with an emotion Jake couldn't quite identify. "Jake, you need to listen to me. There's something you don't know about the day I went down, something they never put in the official reports." Jake's breathing quickened. The voice was unmistakably Rebecca's, down to the slight southern accent she'd never quite lost despite years of military training. She had grown up in Alabama, daughter of a mechanic and a schoolteacher, earning her wings through sheer determination and natural talent that had impressed even the most hardened instructors. "Rebecca, where are you?" Jake whispered into his mask, his eyes scanning the empty sky around him. "Are you alive? Are you safe?" "I'm closer than you think," came the reply. "But first, you need to know the truth about Colonel Peterson. He's not who you think he is, and what happened to me wasn't an accident." The mention of their commanding officer sent a chill down Jake's spine. Colonel Marcus Peterson had been leading their squadron for 2 years, a decorated pilot with an impeccable record. He had been the one to debrief Jake after Rebecca's final mission, had personally delivered the news to her parents. If Rebecca was suggesting something sinister about Peterson, Jake needed to understand exactly what had happened during those final moments over hostile territory. "What are you talking about?" Jake transmitted, banking his aircraft slightly to get a better view of the horizon. "Peterson filed a complete report. You were engaged by enemy fighters. Your aircraft took critical damage." "That's what they wanted everyone to believe." Rebecca's voice carried a bitter edge now. "But I survived the crash, Jake. I made it to the ground, and what I discovered there changed everything." Marcus Rodriguez's voice crackled through the standard comm channel, interrupting the impossible conversation. "Phoenix Lead, we're approaching the eastern boundary of our patrol sector. Request instructions for the next waypoint." Jake toggled back to the squadron frequency, his training taking over even as his mind reeled from Rebecca's revelation. "Copy, Viper. Maintain current heading for another 10 minutes, then we'll execute a banking turn to the south." "Roger that, Phoenix Lead." Jake immediately switched back to the secure channel, desperate to continue the conversation with Rebecca. "You said you survived. Where have you been for 3 months? Why didn't you make contact?" "Because I was captured," Rebecca replied, her voice carrying the weight of unimaginable experiences. "Not by enemy forces like everyone assumes. I was taken by our own people, Jake, Peterson's people. They needed me to disappear because I saw something I wasn't supposed to see." The implications hit Jake like a physical blow. If Rebecca was telling the truth, then everything they had been told about her death was a lie. Worse, it suggested a conspiracy that reached into the highest levels of their command structure. "What did you see?" Jake asked, though part of him feared the answer. "Peterson's been running off-the-books operations," Rebecca said, "selling military intelligence to foreign contacts. I witnessed a meeting that I wasn't supposed to witness. They couldn't risk me reporting what I'd seen, so they staged my death and had me taken to a black site facility." Jake's world tilted on its axis. Colonel Peterson had been more than just their commanding officer. He had been a mentor, someone Jake had looked up to and trusted implicitly. The thought that he might be a traitor felt like a betrayal of everything Jake had sworn to protect. "How did you escape?" Jake managed to ask. "I didn't escape alone," Rebecca replied. "There were others being held at the facility, other military personnel who had stumbled onto Peterson's operation. We worked together, and last week we finally managed to break free." "Then why haven't you gone to the authorities? Why are you contacting me through radio instead of following proper channels?" Rebecca's laugh was hollow and bitter. "Because Peterson isn't working alone, Jake. He has allies throughout the command structure. People who would make sure I disappeared permanently if they knew I was alive. I need your help, but I need you to trust me first." The weight of the revelation settled over Jake like a shroud. If Rebecca was telling the truth, then he was potentially the only person who could help expose a conspiracy that threatened national security. But if she was lying, or if this was some kind of elaborate test or psychological operation, he could be walking into a trap that would destroy his career and possibly his life. "What do you need me to do?" Jake asked, making his decision. "There's a secure facility about 50 miles south of your current position," Rebecca said. "Coordinates 37.42 north, 121.88 west. Peterson is scheduled to meet his contact there this afternoon at 1400 hours. If you can get close enough to record the meeting, we'll have the evidence we need to expose him." Jake quickly calculated the coordinates in his head. The location was just outside their normal patrol area, but not so far that a slight deviation would be noticed or questioned. However, approaching an unknown facility could be interpreted as a hostile act, especially if it was indeed connected to covert operations. "Rebecca, this is incredibly dangerous," Jake said. "If Peterson is involved in something this deep, he'll have security measures in place. I could be walking into a trap." "I know the risks," Rebecca replied. "But Jake, if we don't stop him now, more people are going to die. The intelligence he's been selling has already compromised several operations. Good people have died because of his betrayal." The emotional weight of her words struck Jake deeply. Rebecca had always been passionate about their duty to protect American lives and interests. If she was right about Peterson, then every day they delayed action meant more potential casualties. "How do I know this is really you?" Jake asked, voicing the doubt that had been nagging at him throughout the conversation. "How do I know this isn't some kind of elaborate deception?" "Remember our first training exercise together," Rebecca said without hesitation. "You were so nervous about flying in formation that you nearly collided with the refueling tanker. I talked you through it, step by step, until you relaxed enough to complete the mission. Afterward, you bought me a beer and told me about your little sister Emma, how she was starting college and wanted to be a pilot like you." Jake's breath caught in his throat. Those details were accurate, memories that only Rebecca would know. They had never appeared in any official report or personnel file. The intimate nature of the conversation, the specific details about his sister, convinced him that he was indeed speaking with his former wingman. "Okay," Jake said, his voice firming with resolve. "I believe you, but I need to know exactly what I'm walking into. What kind of security am I going to face at this facility?" "From what I observed during my captivity, Peterson typically travels with a small security detail," Rebecca explained. "2 or 3 operatives, usually positioned as perimeter guards. The facility itself is designed to look like a civilian research station, but it's actually a front for his intelligence operations." Jake absorbed this information while maintaining his position within the formation. His squadron continued their patrol pattern, unaware that their flight leader was planning a potentially career-ending deviation from their mission parameters. "What about backup?" Jake asked. "If something goes wrong, how do I get out?" "I'll be monitoring your approach," Rebecca said. "If the situation turns dangerous, I'll create a distraction to give you an escape route. But Jake, you need to understand that once you do this, there's no going back. Peterson will know that someone is onto him, and he'll take steps to protect himself." The gravity of the situation settled over Jake like a lead blanket. He was about to commit an act that could be interpreted as insubordination, espionage, or worse. But if Rebecca was telling the truth, then his loyalty to his country demanded that he take action against a traitor who had infiltrated the highest levels of military command. "Give me the exact coordinates again," Jake said, making his final decision. "And Rebecca, if this goes wrong, if something happens to me, make sure the truth comes out. Don't let Peterson get away with what he's done." "I won't let you down," Rebecca replied, her voice carrying the same determination that had made her an exceptional pilot. "Coordinates are 37.42 north, 121.88 west. The facility is disguised as a meteorological research station, but you'll recognize it by the 3 large satellite dishes arranged in a triangular pattern." Jake committed the coordinates to memory while calculating the deviation from their current flight path. He would need to separate from his squadron without arousing suspicion, gather the evidence Rebecca needed, and return before anyone noticed his absence. "Phoenix Lead, this is Viper," Marcus Rodriguez's voice crackled through the standard comm channel. "I'm showing a slight fuel consumption anomaly. Request permission to run a diagnostic check." Jake saw an opportunity in his wingman's report. "Copy, Viper. Take your time with that diagnostic. Falcon and Hawk, maintain current patrol pattern. I'm going to swing wide to the south and check on some unusual radar contacts." "Roger, Phoenix Lead," came the replies from his other pilots. Jake banked his Super Hornet away from the formation, his heart pounding as he committed to a course of action that would either expose a dangerous conspiracy or destroy his military career. The coordinates Rebecca had given him were now locked into his navigation system, and he was committed to discovering the truth, whatever the cost. As he flew toward the mysterious facility, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that he was crossing a line from which there would be no return. The weight of his decision pressed down on him like the G-forces during a high-speed maneuver, but his duty to his country and his loyalty to Rebecca drove him forward into the unknown. The facility appeared on the horizon exactly as Rebecca had described it. 3 large satellite dishes arranged in a perfect triangle around a cluster of low, modern buildings. From the air, it looked innocuous enough, but Jake's trained eye picked out details that suggested a more sinister purpose. The unusually heavy security fencing, the lack of visible civilian vehicles, and the presence of what appeared to be military-grade communication equipment. Jake circled the facility at high altitude, using his aircraft's sophisticated sensors to record everything he could observe. His camera systems captured images of the buildings, the vehicles, and most importantly, the people moving around the compound. If Rebecca was right, Colonel Peterson would be arriving soon for his clandestine meeting. "Rebecca, I'm in position," Jake transmitted on the secure channel. "I can see the facility clearly. How much longer until Peterson arrives?" "His convoy should be approaching from the east in about 10 minutes," Rebecca replied. "Be careful, Jake. If they detect your presence, they'll abort the meeting and you'll have risked everything for nothing." Jake acknowledged the warning and adjusted his position to provide optimal surveillance while maintaining enough distance to avoid detection. His aircraft's stealth capabilities would help mask his presence, but he couldn't take any chances with such a sensitive operation. Right on schedule, Jake spotted a convoy of 3 black vehicles approaching the facility from the east. Through his high-powered optics, he could make out the distinctive profile of Colonel Peterson exiting the middle vehicle. Jake's heart sank as he realized that Rebecca's accusations were likely true. What legitimate reason would Peterson have for visiting a secret facility during what was supposed to be a routine day of squadron operations? "I see him," Jake transmitted to Rebecca. "Peterson just arrived. He's meeting with someone near the main building." "Can you get close enough to record their conversation?" Rebecca asked. Jake studied the tactical situation. The facility was in a relatively open area, with little cover for a closer approach. However, his aircraft's advanced listening equipment might be able to pick up conversations from a reasonable distance if he could find the right position. "I'm going to try something," Jake replied, pushing his Super Hornet into a steep dive that would bring him closer to the facility while using the terrain to mask his approach. "If this works, we'll have everything we need to expose Peterson." The next few minutes would determine whether Jake's gamble would pay off or whether he would find himself court-martialed for insubordination and potentially treason. But as he watched Colonel Peterson shake hands with an unknown individual near the mysterious facility, Jake knew that he had made the right choice. The truth, whatever it might be, was worth the risk. Jake's aircraft descended through the thin clouds, its engines whisper quiet in stealth mode as he maneuvered to get within recording range of the facility. Through his advanced optics, he could see Colonel Peterson engaged in what appeared to be an intense conversation with a man in civilian clothes. The stranger was tall and lean, with graying hair and the bearing of someone accustomed to authority. "Rebecca, I'm recording everything," Jake whispered into his microphone, though he knew the secure channel was encrypted. "Peterson is definitely here, and he's meeting with someone I don't recognize." "That's probably Viktor Kozlov," Rebecca's voice crackled back. "He's a former Russian intelligence officer who now works as a broker for military secrets. I saw him several times during my captivity." Jake's blood ran cold. If Peterson was meeting with a Russian agent, then the implications went far beyond simple corruption. This was treason of the highest order, a betrayal that could compromise national security and endanger American lives around the world. Through his surveillance equipment, Jake watched as Peterson handed a briefcase to Kozlov. The Russian opened it briefly, examining the contents before nodding in satisfaction. The exchange was clearly rehearsed, suggesting that this was far from their first meeting. "I'm getting it all," Jake transmitted to Rebecca. "The handoff, their faces, everything. This should be enough evidence to bring Peterson down. Be careful, Jake, Rebecca warned. They have lookouts posted if they spot you. Her warning was cut short by the harsh blare of Jake's radar warning receiver. Someone had locked onto his aircraft with a surface-to-air missile system. The facility's security was more sophisticated than they had anticipated. "I'm taking fire," Jake shouted, pulling his Super Hornet into a sharp climbing turn as he activated his electronic countermeasures. "They've got SAMs." The missile launch was visible as a streak of light rising from the facility's perimeter. Jake's training took over, and he began the evasive maneuvers that had been drilled into him through countless hours of practice. Chaff and flares streamed from his aircraft as he jinked and weaved through the sky, trying to break the missile's lock. "Jake, get out of there," Rebecca's voice was urgent. "The evidence isn't worth your life." But Jake had already made his decision. The recording he had captured was crucial to exposing Peterson's treachery. He couldn't let it be lost, even if it meant risking his own life. He continued his evasive maneuvers while simultaneously transmitting the recorded data to a secure military server. The missile exploded harmlessly several hundred feet behind his aircraft, its proximity fuse triggered by the chaff and flares. Jake had successfully evaded the attack, but he knew that more missiles would follow if he remained in the area. "Data upload complete," Jake reported to Rebecca as he climbed rapidly away from the facility. "I'm clear of the immediate threat, but they know someone was watching." "Then Peterson will go to ground," Rebecca replied. "He'll destroy evidence and eliminate anyone who might implicate him. We need to move fast." Jake banked his aircraft back toward his squadron's patrol area, his mind racing with the implications of what he had just witnessed and recorded. The evidence was damning, but presenting it through proper channels would be complicated by the fact that he had obtained it through unauthorized surveillance during a routine patrol mission. "Rebecca, where are you right now?" Jake asked. "If we're going to expose Peterson, we need to coordinate our approach. The evidence I gathered won't mean anything if you're not alive to corroborate it." "I'm at a safe house about 30 miles from your current position," Rebecca replied. "There are people here who can help us, but they need to verify that the evidence is genuine before they'll take action." Jake understood the caution. In a conspiracy this deep, trust was a luxury that could get people killed. The individuals helping Rebecca would need to be absolutely certain that the evidence was legitimate before they committed to exposing a high-ranking military officer. "What's our next move?" Jake asked. "Land at the civilian airfield near Bakersfield," Rebecca instructed. "Coordinates 35.37 north, 119.05 west. I'll meet you there with the people who can help us." Jake hesitated. Landing at an unauthorized airfield in a military aircraft was a serious breach of protocol that could result in immediate arrest and court-martial. But the evidence he had gathered was too important to ignore, and Rebecca's life hung in the balance. "I'll be there in 20 minutes, Jake said, making his decision. "But Rebecca, if this is a trap, if Peterson has gotten to you somehow—" "It's not a trap," Rebecca interrupted. "I understand your caution, but you have to trust me. This is our only chance to stop Peterson before he causes more damage." Jake acknowledged her transmission and began calculating the course to the civilian airfield. He would need to maintain the pretense of rejoining his squadron while secretly diverting to the rendezvous point. The timing would be critical, and any mistake could expose his activities to Peterson's allies within the military command structure. "Phoenix Lead, this is Viper," Marcus Rodriguez's voice crackled through the standard comm channel. "I've completed my diagnostic and I'm ready to rejoin formation. What's your status?" Jake's throat tightened as he prepared to lie to his wingman, a pilot he had served with for 3 years and trusted with his life. "Copy, Viper. I'm following up on those radar contacts I mentioned. Maintain patrol pattern with Falcon and Hawk. I'll rejoin you in 30 minutes. "Roger that, Phoenix lead. Everything okay? You sound tense." "Just focused on the mission," Jake replied. His voice didn't betray the magnitude of what he was actually doing. "Carry on with standard patrol protocols." As Jake flew toward the civilian airfield, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was about to step into a situation that would change his life forever. The evidence he had gathered could expose a conspiracy that reached the highest levels of military command, but it could also destroy his career and potentially land him in prison. The airfield appeared ahead of him, a small civilian facility with a single runway and minimal infrastructure. Jake had never landed a Super Hornet at such a facility, and the logistics of the operation presented significant challenges. Military aircraft weren't designed for civilian airfields, and his arrival would certainly attract attention from local authorities. "Rebecca, I'm approaching the airfield," Jake transmitted. "This is going to be interesting." "There's a hangar on the south side of the field," Rebecca replied. "Land there and taxi directly inside. The people I'm working with have cleared it with the local authorities." Jake lined up his approach, fighting the crosswind as he brought the powerful fighter down to the small runway. The landing was rougher than he would have liked, but he managed to get the aircraft on the ground safely. Following Rebecca's instructions, he taxied to the designated hangar, where the doors opened to reveal a group of people waiting inside. As Jake shut down his engines and began the post-flight checklist, he spotted Rebecca standing among the group in the hangar. She looked thinner than he remembered, her face bearing the marks of whatever ordeal she had endured during her captivity. But her eyes held the same determination that had made her an exceptional pilot. "Welcome to the Resistance," Rebecca said with a tired smile as Jake climbed down from his aircraft. "I hope you're ready for what comes next." Jake looked around the hangar, taking in the faces of the people who had gathered to help expose Colonel Peterson's conspiracy. They were a diverse group, ranging from what appeared to be military personnel to civilians with the bearing of intelligence operatives. The gravity of the situation settled over him as he realized that he had just committed himself to a course of action that would either save lives or destroy his own. "I'm ready," Jake said, his voice firm with resolve. "Let's bring Peterson down." The next few hours would test everything Jake believed about duty, loyalty, and justice. The evidence he had gathered was just the beginning of a complex operation that would require careful planning and flawless execution. But as he looked into Rebecca's eyes and saw the determination that had driven her to survive her captivity and expose the truth, Jake knew that he had made the right choice. The conspiracy that had cost Rebecca her freedom and nearly her life was about to be exposed, and Jake Morrison was committed to seeing it through to the end, whatever the personal cost might be. Rebecca led Jake deeper into the hangar, where a sophisticated command center had been established among the civilian aircraft maintenance equipment. Banks of computers and communication gear lined one wall, while large monitors displayed satellite imagery and tactical maps. The operation was clearly more extensive than Jake had initially realized. "Jake, I'd like you to meet some people," Rebecca said, gesturing to the group that had assembled around a central table. "This is Agent Sarah Mitchell from the Defense Intelligence Agency, and this is Commander Tom Bradley, formerly of Naval Intelligence." Jake recognized the names, though he had never met either person face to face. Both were legends in their respective fields, known for their integrity and dedication to protecting national security. Their presence lent credibility to Rebecca's story and convinced Jake that he was indeed part of a legitimate operation to expose Peterson's treachery. "Commander Morrison," Agent Mitchell said, extending her hand, "we've been following your career with interest. Your reputation for excellence and integrity is why Rebecca specifically requested your assistance." "Thank you, ma'am," Jake replied, shaking her hand firmly. "I have to admit, this situation is unlike anything I've encountered in my military career." "That's because Peterson's operation is unlike anything we've seen before," Commander Bradley interjected. "He's been using his position to identify and recruit other military personnel who might be susceptible to corruption. The network he's built is extensive and dangerous." Agent Mitchell activated one of the large monitors, displaying a complex organizational chart that showed Peterson at the center of a web of connections, spanning multiple branches of the military and intelligence community. Jake studied the chart with growing alarm, recognizing several names of people he had served with or encountered during his career. "How long has this been going on?" Jake asked. "We believe Peterson began his treacherous activities approximately 4 years ago," Agent Mitchell replied. "Initially, it was small-scale intelligence sharing, but it has escalated dramatically over the past 18 months. Rebecca moved to stand beside Jake, her expression grim. "The facility where I was held contained evidence of dozens of compromised operations. Peterson's intelligence sales have resulted in the deaths of American service members and the failure of critical missions." The weight of the revelation hit Jake like a physical blow. American soldiers had died because of Peterson's betrayal, and the man responsible had been in a position of authority over Jake's own squadron. The thought that he had served under a traitor, that he had trusted Peterson with his life and the lives of his fellow pilots, filled Jake with a rage that threatened to overwhelm his professional composure. "What do you need from me?" Jake asked, his voice tight with controlled anger. "The surveillance footage you captured is crucial," Commander Bradley explained. "But it's only part of the evidence we need to build a comprehensive case. We need you to help us identify other members of Peterson's network within your unit." Jake nodded, understanding the implications. He would need to scrutinize his fellow pilots and support personnel, looking for signs of corruption or suspicious behavior. The thought of investigating people he had served with, people he considered friends, was distressing but necessary. "There's something else," Rebecca said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Peterson knows that I'm alive. He's been actively searching for me and he's getting close. If we don't move soon, he'll either find me or go completely underground." Agent Mitchell pulled up another display showing recent communication intercepts. "We've been monitoring Peterson's communications, and there's been a significant increase in activity over the past 48 hours. He's clearly preparing for something." "What kind of something?" Jake asked. "We think he's planning to eliminate everyone who might be able to expose him," Commander Bradley replied, "including you, now that you've been in contact with Rebecca." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. If Peterson was willing to kill to protect his secret, then everyone involved in the operation was in immediate danger. The evidence they had gathered would be meaningless if they were all dead. "How do we protect ourselves while building the case?" Jake asked. "We move fast and we stay ahead of him," Agent Mitchell replied. "We have a plan, but it requires your continued cooperation and access to your squadron's operations." Rebecca moved closer to Jake, her expression intense. "Jake, what we're asking you to do is dangerous. If Peterson discovers that you're working with us, he'll eliminate you without hesitation. You need to understand that there's no going back from this point." Jake looked around the room at the assembled group of intelligence professionals and military personnel who had committed themselves to exposing Peterson's conspiracy. They were all putting their lives on the line to protect national security and prevent future betrayals. "I understand the risks," Jake said firmly, "but I also understand my duty. Peterson has betrayed everything we've sworn to protect. I won't let him get away with it." Agent Mitchell nodded approvingly. "Good. Here's what we need you to do. Return to your squadron and maintain normal operations. We'll provide you with secure communication equipment so you can stay in contact with us. Watch for anything unusual in Peterson's behavior or instructions. We also need you to identify which members of your unit might be compromised," Commander Bradley added. "Look for pilots who have unexplained wealth, who have been receiving unusual assignments, or who seem to have access to information beyond their clearance level." Jake absorbed the instructions, mentally cataloging the members of his squadron and trying to identify anyone who might fit the profile of a compromised operative. The task was daunting, as it required him to view his colleagues with suspicion while maintaining the facade of normal operations. "What about the evidence from today's surveillance?" Jake asked. "When do we present it to the authorities?" "We're still building the case," Agent Mitchell replied. "Your footage is crucial, but we need more evidence to ensure that Peterson and his entire network are exposed. A premature move could allow some of the conspirators to escape justice." Rebecca handed Jake a small device that looked like a standard military communication unit. "This is a secure transmitter. It's been modified to look like standard equipment, but it will allow you to communicate with us without detection. Use it sparingly, and only when you have critical information to report." Jake pocketed the device, feeling the weight of the responsibility that had been placed on his shoulders. He was no longer just a pilot following orders. He was an active participant in a counterintelligence operation that could determine the fate of national security. "How long do we have before Peterson realizes something is wrong?" Jake asked. "Not long," Commander Bradley replied grimly. "Our intelligence suggests that he's planning something significant within the next 72 hours. If we can't stop him before then, he may disappear entirely." The urgency of the situation crystallized in Jake's mind. They had less than 3 days to gather the evidence needed to expose Peterson's conspiracy and bring him to justice. The margin for error was virtually non-existent, and the stakes couldn't be higher. "I need to get back to my squadron," Jake said. "They'll be expecting me to rejoin the patrol, and any delay could raise suspicions." "Be careful, Jake," Rebecca said, touching his arm. "Peterson is dangerous, and he has resources we're still discovering. If you sense any immediate threat, abort the mission and contact us immediately." Jake nodded, understanding the gravity of the warning. As he prepared to return to his aircraft, he took one last look around the hangar at the people who were risking everything to expose the truth. Their dedication and courage inspired him, and he was determined not to let them down. The flight back to rejoin his squadron was tense, with Jake constantly scanning the radio frequencies for any sign that Peterson might be monitoring his communications. He maintained the pretense of investigating radar contacts while actually flying a complex route designed to mask his true activities. "Phoenix Lead, this is Viper." Marcus Rodriguez's voice crackled through the comm system as Jake approached the patrol area. "We were starting to worry about you. Everything okay?" "All clear, Viper," Jake replied, forcing his voice to remain steady. "Those radar contacts turned out to be civilian aircraft off course. I'm rejoining formation now." As Jake slipped back into his position within the four-ship formation, He began the delicate process of observing his fellow pilots for any signs of suspicious behavior. The task was made more difficult by the fact that he had to maintain normal operations while conducting covert surveillance of people he had served with for years. Captain Diana Chen flew with her usual precision, her aircraft maintaining perfect spacing and her radio communications crisp and professional. Lieutenant Commander Ryan Thompson displayed the same steady competence that had made him a valued member of the squadron. Marcus Rodriguez continued to exhibit the easy confidence that had earned him his call sign of Viper. On the surface, everything appeared normal, but Jake now understood that appearances could be deceiving and that Peterson's influence might have corrupted people he had trusted implicitly. The thought was deeply disturbing, but he forced himself to maintain objective observation while they completed their patrol mission. As they returned to base, Jake's mind raced with the implications of what he had learned. The next few days would test every skill he had developed during his military career, as he attempted to expose a conspiracy while maintaining the trust and confidence of his fellow pilots. The stakes were higher than any mission he had ever flown, and failure could result in the loss of American lives and the compromise of national security. But as Jake prepared to land his aircraft and begin the most dangerous mission of his career, he drew strength from the knowledge that he was fighting for something greater than himself. The truth about Peterson's betrayal would be exposed, and justice would be served, regardless of the personal cost. The landing pattern at Naval Air Station Lemoore was routine, but Jake found himself studying every detail with new eyes. Peterson's influence extended throughout the base, and any one of the ground personnel or support staff could be part of his network. The paranoia was unsettling, but Jake understood that it was necessary for survival in the dangerous game he was now playing. After completing his post-flight procedures, Jake made his way to the squadron-ready room for the standard debrief. Colonel Peterson was waiting there, his expression unreadable as he reviewed the flight logs and mission reports. Jake felt a surge of adrenaline as he came face to face with the man he now knew to be a traitor. "Commander Morrison," Peterson said, his voice carrying the same authority it always had. "I understand you investigated some unusual radar contacts during today's patrol." Jake's heart hammered in his chest, but his expression remained neutral. "Yes, sir. Turned out to be civilian aircraft that had strayed from their flight path. I ensured they were redirected to appropriate airspace." Peterson studied Jake's face for a long moment, and Jake wondered if the colonel suspected something. The silence stretched uncomfortably until Peterson finally nodded and moved on to debrief the other pilots. "Good work today, everyone," Peterson said as he concluded the session. "Tomorrow we'll be conducting some special training exercises. I'll brief you on the details in the morning." As the pilots began to disperse, Jake lingered in the ready room, hoping to overhear any additional information about the special training exercises. Peterson's mention of unusual activities aligned with Agent Mitchell's warning about the colonel's accelerated timeline. "Commander Morrison," Peterson called out, causing Jake to freeze. "A word, if you please." Jake approached Peterson's desk, fighting to keep his expression neutral. "Yes, sir." "I've been reviewing your service record," Peterson said, leaning back in his chair. "Exceptional performance, strong leadership qualities, and an impeccable reputation for integrity. These are qualities I value highly in my pilots." "Thank you, sir," Jake replied, uncertain where the conversation was leading. "I'm considering you for a special assignment," Peterson continued. "Something that would advance your career significantly, but it would require absolute discretion and loyalty." Jake felt as if he were walking through a minefield. Peterson's offer could be a test of his loyalty, or it could be an attempt to recruit him into the conspiracy. Either way, his response would be carefully scrutinized. "I'm honored by your confidence, sir," Jake said carefully. "May I ask what the assignment entails?" Peterson smiled, but there was something cold in his eyes. "All in good time, Commander. First, I need to know that you're committed to the success of this squadron and the mission we serve." "Absolutely, sir," Jake replied without hesitation. "I've dedicated my career to serving my country and protecting American interests." "Excellent," Peterson said, standing up from his chair. "Report to my office tomorrow at 800 hours. We'll discuss the details then." As Jake left the ready room, he felt the weight of Peterson's scrutiny following him. The colonel's offer was clearly a test, and Jake's response would determine whether he was viewed as a potential ally or a threat. The secure transmitter in his pocket seemed to burn against his skin, a reminder of the dangerous game he was now playing. Jake made his way to his quarters, his mind racing with the implications of Peterson's offer. He needed to contact Rebecca and the others immediately, but he also had to be careful not to compromise his position within the squadron. The balance between gathering intelligence and maintaining his cover was becoming increasingly precarious. Once safely in his room, Jake activated the secure transmitter and waited for the encrypted connection to establish. Rebecca's voice came through clearly after a few moments. "Jake, what's your status?" she asked immediately. "Peterson just offered me a special assignment," Jake reported quietly. "He wants to meet with me tomorrow morning at 800 hours. I think he's either testing my loyalty or trying to recruit me." "That's sooner than we expected," Rebecca replied, her voice tense. "Agent Mitchell and Commander Bradley are going to want to hear about this immediately. Can you hold for a moment?" Jake waited, listening to the muffled conversation in the background as Rebecca consulted with the intelligence operatives. The delay gave him time to consider his options and prepare for what might be a crucial turning point in the operation. "Jake, Agent Mitchell wants to speak with you," Rebecca said after a few minutes. "Commander Morrison," Agent Mitchell's voice came through the transmitter. "This development changes our timeline significantly. If Peterson is moving to recruit you, it means he's either desperate or he suspects something." "What do you recommend, ma'am?" Jake asked. "Play along, but be extremely careful," Agent Mitchell replied. "We need to know what Peterson is planning, and this could be our best opportunity to gather that intelligence. However, if you feel threatened at any point, abort immediately." Jake acknowledged the instructions and prepared to end the transmission, but Rebecca's voice stopped him. "Jake, there's something else you need to know," she said. "We've intercepted communications suggesting that Peterson is planning to eliminate several people who might pose a threat to his operation. Your name was mentioned." The revelation hit Jake like a physical blow. He had known that his involvement in the operation was dangerous, but the confirmation that Peterson was actively planning his elimination made the threat immediate and personal. "When?" Jake asked. "We're not sure," Rebecca replied. "But it's likely to happen soon, possibly within the next 24 hours. You need to be extremely careful, Jake. Peterson has resources we're still discovering, and he won't hesitate to kill to protect his secret." Jake absorbed the warning, understanding that his life now hung in the balance. The mission to expose Peterson's conspiracy had become a race against time, with his own survival at stake. "I understand," Jake said. "I'll be careful, but I won't abandon the mission. Too many lives depend on stopping Peterson." After ending the transmission, Jake sat in his quarters contemplating the magnitude of what he had undertaken. The evidence he had gathered was crucial, but it was only the beginning of a complex operation that would require perfect execution to succeed. The margin for error had been eliminated entirely, and any mistake could result in his death and the collapse of the entire investigation. Sleep came fitfully that night, interrupted by dreams of aerial combat and the haunting image of Peterson's cold smile. Jake woke several times, his hand instinctively reaching for the secure transmitter, half convinced that he had heard suspicious noises outside his door. The paranoia was exhausting, but he knew it was necessary for survival. The next morning arrived with deceptive normalcy. Jake went through his usual routine of physical training and breakfast in the officers' mess, maintaining conversations with his fellow pilots while secretly studying their behavior for any signs of complicity in Peterson's conspiracy. The effort was mentally exhausting, requiring him to maintain multiple layers of deception while appearing completely natural. At precisely 800 hours, Jake knocked on Peterson's office door. The colonel's invitation to enter was delivered in the same authoritative tone he had always used, but Jake now heard different undertones in the voice of a man he knew to be a traitor. "Commander Morrison," Peterson said, gesturing to a chair across from his desk. "Thank you for being punctual. I appreciate that quality in my officers." Jake took the offered seat, nodding that Peterson had arranged the office so that Jake would be sitting with his back to the door. The positioning could be innocent, but it also provided a tactical advantage if Peterson intended to eliminate him during their meeting. "I've been thinking about our conversation yesterday," Peterson continued, "and I believe you're exactly the kind of officer I need for this special assignment." "I'm honored by your confidence, sir," Jake replied, maintaining his professional demeanor despite the tension he felt. Peterson leaned forward, his expression becoming more intense. "What I'm about to discuss with you is classified at the highest levels. The work we do here goes beyond the normal parameters of military operations. We serve a higher purpose, one that sometimes requires us to make difficult choices." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. Peterson's words were clearly a prelude to recruitment into his conspiracy, and Jake would need to navigate the conversation carefully to avoid suspicion while gathering intelligence. "I understand, sir," Jake said. "I've always been willing to go above and beyond in service to my country." "Excellent," Peterson said, his smile lacking any warmth. "You see, Commander, the traditional military hierarchy sometimes prevents us from taking the actions necessary to protect American interests. There are times when we must work outside normal channels to ensure that critical objectives are achieved." Jake nodded, playing the role of an interested and loyal subordinate. "What kind of objectives, sir?" Peterson stood up and walked to a map on his office wall, pointing to various locations marked with red pins. "Intelligence gathering, strategic positioning, elimination of threats to national security. The work is dangerous and requires absolute discretion, but it's essential for maintaining American superiority in an increasingly complex world." "It sounds like important work," Jake said, though every word felt like poison in his mouth. "It is," Peterson replied, returning to his desk. "And it's also financially rewarding. The officers who assist me in these operations are compensated well above their normal military pay. Consider it a performance bonus for exceptional service." Jake's stomach churned as Peterson openly offered him a bribe. The corruption was even more blatant than he had expected, and he struggled to maintain his composure while listening to the colonel's pitch. "That's very generous, sir," Jake managed to say. "Of course, such work requires complete loyalty and absolute secrecy," Peterson continued. "The officers who work with me understand that discretion is not just preferred, It's mandatory. Those who betray that trust face severe consequences. The threat was barely veiled, and Jake understood that Peterson was warning him about the fate of anyone who crossed him. The thought of Rebecca's ordeal and the knowledge that other military personnel had been killed to protect Peterson's secret filled Jake with a rage that threatened to overwhelm his professional facade. "I understand completely, sir," Jake said, his voice steady despite the turmoil in his mind. Peterson studied Jake's face for a long moment, then nodded in satisfaction. "Good. Your first assignment will be relatively simple. There's a pilot who has been asking questions about some of our operations. I need you to monitor her activities and report back to me." Jake's heart nearly stopped. Peterson was asking him to spy on Rebecca, though the colonel clearly didn't know that Jake was already in contact with her. The irony was almost overwhelming, but Jake recognized the opportunity to gather critical intelligence. "Who is the pilot, sir?" Jake asked, though he already knew the answer. "Captain Rebecca Williams," Peterson replied. "She was officially reported as killed in action 3 months ago, but we have reason to believe she may have survived and is now working against us." Jake forced himself to look surprised. "I thought Captain Williams was confirmed dead, sir." "So did we," Peterson said grimly. "But recent intelligence suggests otherwise. If she is alive, she represents a significant threat to our operations. I need someone I can trust to help locate and neutralize her." The casual mention of murder sent another chill through Jake's body. Peterson was openly discussing the assassination of a fellow military officer, a woman who had dedicated her life to serving her country. The colonel's betrayal was even more complete than Jake had imagined. "What exactly do you need me to do?" Jake asked, though the question made him feel sick. "I have some leads on her possible location," Peterson replied, pulling out a file folder. "I need you to investigate these locations discreetly and report any signs of her presence. If you find her, do not engage. Contact me immediately, and I'll handle the situation." Jake accepted the folder, nodding that it contained several addresses and photographs. One of the locations was uncomfortably close to the safe house where he had met Rebecca the previous day. If Peterson's intelligence was accurate, the colonel was closing in on Rebecca's location. "I'll begin investigating immediately, sir," Jake said, standing up to leave. "Commander," Peterson called out, causing Jake to turn back. "I hope I don't need to emphasize the importance of discretion in this matter. Captain Williams is considered extremely dangerous, and any compromise of this operation could have serious consequences." "Understood, sir," Jake replied. "You can count on my complete loyalty." As Jake left Peterson's office, he felt the weight of the folder in his hands and the magnitude of the deception he was maintaining. He was now actively working as a double agent, pretending to hunt for Rebecca while actually protecting her and gathering evidence of Peterson's conspiracy. The secure transmitter in his pocket seemed to burn against his skin as he made his way back to his quarters. He needed to contact Rebecca immediately and warn her that Peterson was closing in on her location. The timeline for their operation had accelerated dramatically, and every moment of delay increased the risk of discovery. Jake waited until he was safely in his room before activating the transmitter. The connection established quickly, and Rebecca's voice came through with obvious concern. "Jake, what happened in the meeting?" she asked immediately. "Peterson tried to recruit me," Jake replied quickly. "He wants me to hunt for you. He knows you're alive, and he has intelligence on your possible locations." "How much does he know?" Rebecca asked, her voice tense. "Too much," Jake replied. "He has addresses, photographs, and he's clearly been conducting surveillance. You need to move immediately. We're already preparing to relocate, Rebecca said. Agent Mitchell anticipated this possibility. What else did Peterson tell you? Jake quickly summarized the conversation, including Peterson's offer of financial compensation and his veiled threats about the consequences of betrayal. Rebecca listened without interruption, absorbing the intelligence that would be crucial to their operation. "This is actually good news," Rebecca said when Jake had finished. "Peterson's recruitment attempt means he's getting desperate. He's making mistakes, and that gives us opportunities." "What do you want me to do?" Jake asked. "Play along with his assignment," Rebecca replied, "but feed him false information about your search. Meanwhile, we'll use his intelligence to identify and disrupt his surveillance network." Jake acknowledged the instructions, understanding that he was now walking an even more dangerous tightrope. He would need to maintain Peterson's trust while actively working against him, a deception that would require perfect execution to avoid detection. As he prepared to begin his false search for Rebecca, Jake reflected on the transformation that had occurred in his life over the past 24 hours. He had gone from a routine military pilot to a key operative in a counterintelligence operation that could determine the fate of national security. The responsibility was overwhelming, but he was determined to see it through to the end. The next few hours would test every skill he had developed during his military career, as he attempted to outmaneuver a dangerous adversary while protecting the people who were risking their lives to expose the truth. The stakes couldn't be higher, and failure would mean not just his own death, but the continued compromise of American military operations and the loss of innocent lives. But as Jake prepared to begin the most dangerous mission of his career, he drew strength from the knowledge that he was fighting for something greater than himself. The conspiracy that had corrupted Peterson and threatened national security would be exposed, and justice would be served, regardless of the personal cost. Jake spent the rest of the morning studying the intelligence Peterson had provided, memorizing the addresses and photographs while planning his approach to the false investigation. The colonel's information was surprisingly detailed, suggesting that he had significant resources dedicated to hunting Rebecca. The scope of his surveillance network was both impressive and terrifying. At 1300 hours, Jake made his way to the flight line to begin his supposed search mission. He had filed a flight plan that would take him to the general area of Peterson's suspected locations, but his actual destination was a prearranged meeting point where he could coordinate with Rebecca's team. As Jake performed his pre-flight inspection, he noticed Colonel Peterson observing him from the tower. The colonel's presence was unusual, and Jake wondered if it represented additional scrutiny or simply Peterson's desire to ensure that his new recruit was following orders. "Commander Morrison," Peterson's voice crackled through Jake's headset as he prepared to taxi. "I'll be monitoring your progress. Report any significant findings immediately." "Roger that, sir," Jake replied, maintaining his professional demeanor despite the knowledge that he was about to deceive his commanding officer. The takeoff was routine, but Jake felt the weight of Peterson's expectations and the knowledge that his every move was being monitored. The colonel's surveillance capabilities were more extensive than Jake had initially realized, and he would need to be extremely careful to avoid detection. As Jake flew toward his first supposed search location, he activated the secure transmitter and contacted Rebecca's team. Agent Mitchell's voice came through immediately. "Commander Morrison, what's your status?" she asked. "I'm airborne and en route to the first location," Jake replied. "Peterson is monitoring my progress, so I need to make this look legitimate." "Understood," Agent Mitchell said. We've prepared some false evidence for you to report. Make a show of investigating the first two locations, then proceed to the third location where we'll have a surprise waiting for Peterson." Jake acknowledged the instructions, understanding that the intelligence team had prepared a complex deception designed to turn Peterson's own surveillance against him. The operation was becoming increasingly sophisticated, with multiple layers of misdirection and counter-surveillance. The first location was a small airfield in the desert, similar to the one where Jake had met Rebecca the previous day. He circled the facility several times, taking photographs and making detailed observations that he would later report to Peterson. The investigation appeared thorough and legitimate, but Jake found no signs of Rebecca or her team. "No activity at Location 1, Jake reported to Peterson through the standard communication channel. "Proceeding to Location 2. "Copy that, Commander," Peterson replied. "Take your time and be thorough. We can't afford to miss anything." The second location was an abandoned warehouse complex on the outskirts of a small town. Jake repeated his surveillance routine, documenting everything he observed while maintaining contact with both Peterson and Rebecca's team. The dual communication was mentally exhausting, requiring him to maintain separate narratives for each audience. "Location 2 also negative," Jake reported to Peterson. "No signs of recent activity or occupation." "Continue to Location 3, Peterson ordered. "Intelligence suggests that's our most promising lead." Jake's pulse quickened as he flew toward the third location. According to Agent Mitchell, this was where they had prepared their surprise for Peterson. Jake didn't know exactly what to expect, but he trusted that the intelligence team had developed a plan that would advance their investigation. The third location was a small ranch house surrounded by open fields, isolated from the nearest town by several miles. As Jake approached, he could see vehicles parked around the property and people moving about the grounds. Unlike the previous locations, this one showed clear signs of recent occupation. "I have activity at Location 3, Jake reported to Peterson, his voice carrying genuine excitement. "Multiple vehicles, several individuals on the property." "Excellent," Peterson replied, his satisfaction evident. "Get as close as you can and document everything. If you spot the target, do not engage. I'll dispatch a team to handle the situation." Jake began his surveillance routine, but this time he knew he was documenting a carefully prepared deception. The people on the ground were part of Rebecca's team, and their activities were designed to convince Peterson that he had finally located his quarry. Through his high-powered optics, Jake could see Agent Mitchell coordinating the activities on the ground. She was playing the role of Rebecca, moving about the property in a way that would be visible to Jake's surveillance, but maintaining enough distance to avoid clear identification. "I have positive identification," Jake reported to Peterson, his voice carefully modulated to convey urgency without suspicion. "The target is on the property, along with several associates." "Outstanding work, Commander," Peterson replied. "Maintain surveillance and await further instructions. I'm dispatching a team to your location immediately." Jake acknowledged the transmission while simultaneously contacting Rebecca's team through the secure channel. "The trap is set," he reported. "Peterson is sending a team to your location." "Perfect," Agent Mitchell replied. "We're ready for them. When they arrive, we'll have all the evidence we need to expose Peterson's entire operation." As Jake maintained his surveillance of the ranch house, he realized that the operation was approaching its climax. Peterson's team would arrive expecting to eliminate Rebecca and her associates, but instead, they would walk into a carefully prepared trap that would provide the final evidence needed to expose the conspiracy. The next few hours would determine whether their elaborate deception would succeed or whether Peterson's caution would allow him to escape justice. Jake's role as a double agent had been crucial to the operation's success, but he knew that the most dangerous part was yet to come. As he waited for Peterson's team to arrive, Jake reflected on the journey that had brought him to this moment. 24 hours ago, he had been a routine military pilot with no knowledge of the conspiracy that had corrupted his commanding officer. Now he was a key operative in a counterintelligence operation that could determine the fate of national security. The transformation had been rapid and complete, but Jake had no regrets about the path he had chosen. Peterson's betrayal had cost American lives and compromised national security, and bringing him to justice was worth any personal risk. The evidence they had gathered would ensure that Peterson and his associates faced the consequences of their treachery. But as Jake watched the ranch house through his aircraft surveillance equipment, he knew that the mission was far from over. Peterson was dangerous and resourceful, and he would not surrender without a fight. The final confrontation would test everything Jake had learned about courage, loyalty, and the price of doing what was right. The sound of approaching helicopters announced the arrival of Peterson's team. Jake could see two military helicopters approaching the ranch house at high speed, their weapons systems clearly visible. Peterson had dispatched a heavily armed force, confirming that he intended to eliminate Rebecca and her associates permanently. "Contact," Jake reported to both Peterson and Rebecca's team simultaneously. "I have two helicopters approaching the target location." "Maintain surveillance and document everything," Peterson ordered. "I want a complete record of the operation." Jake focused his aircraft's recording equipment on the unfolding scene, knowing that he was about to capture evidence that would be crucial to exposing Peterson's conspiracy. The helicopters touched down near the ranch house, and armed operatives began moving toward the buildings. What happened next would determine whether their elaborate deception would succeed in bringing Peterson to justice, or whether the colonel's paranoia and resources would allow him to escape accountability for his crimes. Jake's role as a witness to the operation would be crucial to ensuring that the truth was finally revealed. As the armed operatives approached the ranch house, Jake maintained his surveillance while simultaneously providing intelligence to Rebecca's team. The operation was entering its most critical phase, and every decision made in the next few minutes would have far-reaching consequences for national security and the lives of everyone involved. The helicopters had barely touched down when Agent Mitchell's voice crackled through Jake's secure transmitter. "Phase 2 initiated," she reported. "We have Peterson's team on the ground and we're recording everything." Jake watched through his surveillance equipment as the armed operatives moved toward the ranch house with military precision. They were clearly experienced professionals, probably former Special Forces operators who had been recruited into Peterson's conspiracy. The sight of American military personnel being used for treasonous purposes filled Jake with a mixture of anger and sadness. "Target acquired," one of the operatives reported over their communication channel, which Jake was monitoring through equipment Rebecca's team had provided. "We have visual confirmation of multiple subjects inside the primary structure." Jake realized that the operatives were seeing exactly what Agent Mitchell wanted them to see. The intelligence team had prepared a sophisticated deception that would draw Peterson's people into a trap while providing irrefutable evidence of their criminal activities. "Maintain surveillance and prepare for assault," the team leader ordered. "Remember, we need to eliminate all witnesses. No one leaves this location alive." The casual discussion of murder sent another chill through Jake's body. Peterson's operatives were clearly prepared to commit mass murder to protect their conspiracy, confirming that the colonel's betrayal was even more complete than Jake had imagined. Peterson's team is moving into position, Jake reported to Agent Mitchell through the secure channel. They're preparing to assault the building. Copy that, Agent Mitchell replied. We're ready for them. When they breach the building, we'll have them exactly where we want them. Jake watched as the operatives positioned themselves around the ranch house, their movements coordinated and professional. They were clearly following established protocols for eliminating threats, but they had no idea that they were walking into a carefully prepared trap. The assault began with a flashbang grenade thrown through the front window, followed immediately by armed operatives storming through multiple entrances. Jake's surveillance equipment captured every detail of the operation, providing evidence that would be crucial to prosecuting Peterson and his associates. Breach successful, the team leader reported. We're inside the structure. But instead of finding Rebecca and her associates, Peterson's operatives found themselves facing a squad of FBI agents who had been waiting in concealment. The ranch house had been a trap from the beginning, designed to capture Peterson's people in the act of attempting murder. Federal agents. Agent Mitchell's voice boomed through the building's public address system. Drop your weapons and surrender immediately. The confusion and panic among Peterson's operatives was evident even from Jake's aerial vantage point. They had expected to be conducting a simple elimination operation, but instead, they found themselves surrounded by federal law enforcement officers. "This is a trap," one of the operatives shouted over their communication channel. "Abort the mission." But it was too late. The FBI agents had surrounded the building, and Peterson's people were trapped inside with no hope of escape. Jake watched as the operatives reluctantly dropped their weapons and emerged from the building with their hands raised. "Excellent work, Commander." Agent Mitchell's voice came through Jake's secure transmitter. "We have Peterson's entire assault team in custody, and we've recorded everything. This should be more than enough evidence to bring down the entire conspiracy." Jake felt a surge of satisfaction as he watched the arrests taking place below. After months of careful planning and dangerous deception, they had finally succeeded in exposing Peterson's conspiracy. The evidence they had gathered would ensure that justice was served and that future betrayals were prevented. "What's our next move?" Jake asked. "Return to base and maintain normal operations," Agent Mitchell replied. "We'll handle Peterson's arrest, but we need you to continue your cover until we're ready to move on the entire network." Jake acknowledged the instructions and began his return flight to Naval Air Station Lemoore. The operation had been a complete success, but he knew that the most dangerous part was yet to come. Peterson would realize that he had been betrayed, and his reaction would be swift and potentially violent. As Jake flew back to base, he prepared himself for the final confrontation with his commanding officer. Peterson would expect a report on the operation, and Jake would need to maintain his deception long enough for the FBI to complete their arrests. The next few hours would test every skill he had developed during his career as both a pilot and an intelligence operative. The landing at Lemoore was routine, but Jake felt the weight of what he had accomplished settling over him like a heavy blanket. He had successfully exposed a conspiracy that reached the highest levels of military command, but the personal cost of the operation was only beginning to become clear. Peterson was waiting in the hangar when Jake taxied his aircraft to the parking area. The colonel's expression was unreadable, but Jake could sense the tension in his posture. Something had clearly gone wrong with the operation at the ranch house, and Peterson was looking for answers. "Commander Morrison," Peterson called out as Jake climbed down from his aircraft. "I need a complete debrief immediately." Jake followed Peterson to a secure briefing room, his mind racing with the story he would need to tell. The colonel would expect a detailed report on the operation, and Jake would need to provide enough information to satisfy Peterson's curiosity without revealing that he had been working against him. "The operation was a complete success, sir," Jake began, settling into a chair across from Peterson. "We located the target and your team moved in to eliminate her and her associates." "And," Peterson prompted, his eyes narrowing. "There was some resistance, but your team handled it professionally," Jake continued, sticking to the cover story Agent Mitchell had provided. "All targets were eliminated and the site was secured." Peterson studied Jake's face for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Excellent work, Commander. This operation will eliminate a significant threat to our activities." Jake maintained his professional demeanor despite the knowledge that Peterson was celebrating what he believed to be Rebecca's murder. The colonel's callousness was shocking, even after everything Jake had learned about his betrayal. "What are our next objectives, sir?" Jake asked. "We have several other potential threats to investigate," Peterson replied. "But first, I want to personally inspect the site of today's operation. I'll be taking a helicopter to the ranch house within the hour." Jake's heart nearly stopped. If Peterson went to the ranch house, he would discover that his operatives had been arrested and that the entire operation had been a trap. The colonel's reaction would be swift and violent, and Jake would be his primary suspect. "Is there anything specific you'd like me to prepare for your inspection, sir?" Jake asked, trying to buy time while his mind raced with options. "Just maintain normal operations," Peterson replied. "I'll handle the follow-up personally." As Jake left the briefing room, he activated his secure transmitter and contacted Agent Mitchell immediately. "Peterson is heading to the ranch house," he reported urgently. "He'll discover the truth within the hour." "We're ready for him," Agent Mitchell replied. "FBI agents are standing by to arrest him as soon as he arrives at the scene. Your part in this operation is complete, Commander. Well done." Jake felt a mixture of relief and apprehension as he realized that the dangerous game he had been playing was finally coming to an end. Peterson would be arrested within the hour, and the conspiracy that had threatened national security would be exposed. But Jake also knew that his own life would never be the same after the events of the past few days. As he waited for news of Peterson's arrest, Jake reflected on the transformation that had occurred in his life. He had gone from a routine military pilot to a key operative in a counterintelligence operation that had exposed one of the most dangerous conspiracies in recent military history. The experience had tested every aspect of his character and capabilities, but he had emerged with his integrity intact and his duty fulfilled. The secure transmitter crackled to life with Agent Mitchell's voice. "We have Peterson in custody," she reported. "He's been arrested on charges of treason, conspiracy, and murder. The entire network is being rolled up as we speak." Jake felt a surge of satisfaction mixed with profound relief. The dangerous mission that had consumed his life for the past few days was finally over, and justice had been served. Peterson's betrayal had been exposed, and the threat to national security had been eliminated. But as Jake prepared to face the aftermath of the operation, he knew that his service to his country was far from over. The experience had changed him in fundamental ways, and he would carry the lessons learned during this mission for the rest of his career. The price of freedom was eternal vigilance, and Jake Morrison had proven himself worthy of that sacred trust. The investigation that followed Peterson's arrest revealed the full scope of the conspiracy that had corrupted elements of the military command structure. Dozens of personnel were implicated in the treasonous activities, and the intelligence losses were staggering. But thanks to Jake's courage and Rebecca's survival, the damage had been contained and the perpetrators brought to justice. Rebecca was officially restored to active duty with full honors. Her supposed death revealed to be an elaborate deception designed to protect her while she gathered evidence against Peterson. Her courage and determination had been instrumental in exposing the conspiracy, and her partnership with Jake had proven that the bonds forged in military service could overcome even the most dangerous betrayals. As Jake stood in the hangar watching Peterson being led away in handcuffs, he reflected on the ghost mark that had started this entire journey. Rebecca's call sign had saved his life, and the lives of countless others by exposing a conspiracy that threatened the very foundations of national security. The voice of his lost protege had guided him through the darkest mission of his career, and he would never forget the debt he owed to her courage and sacrifice. The F-18 Super Hornets that had been locked onto their targets during routine patrol exercises would continue their missions, but they would do so with the knowledge that the threat from within had been eliminated. The ghost mark of a fallen protege had led to the exposure of a conspiracy that could have compromised American military operations for years to come. Justice had been served, and the price of freedom had been paid once again by those willing to risk everything in service to their country. Jake Morrison had proven himself worthy of the trust placed in him, and the legacy of his actions would inspire future generations of military personnel to maintain the highest standards of integrity and courage in defense of the nation they had sworn to protect.